I created this sketch based on the already formed idea and image of the future painting. I used a B2 pencil as my tool, as it produces a soft, lively line and allows for easy correction of the shape without pressing on the paper. I began with the general silhouette. I outlined the oval of the head, delineated the central axis of the face, and defined the lines of the eyes, nose, and mouth. It was important to maintain symmetry, a calm, slightly detached expression. After that, I moved on to the hair, defining its direction with broad, loose lines without going into detail. I outlined the clothing loosely, concentrating on large folds and the overall mass. I used the eraser not only for corrections but also as a tool, softening the lines, removing excess, leaving the sketch light and airy. At this stage, it was more important for me to convey mood and rhythm and precision. I approached the coloring deliberately, having determined the sequence of work in advance: background, clothing, hair, face, and small details. I used acrylic paints and 3 brushes, a fine shade and a medium, and a larger than medium brush for this work. This combination allowed me to freely vary the texture and level of detail. It was no coincidence that I started with the background. It sets the overall emotional tone of the painting. I used rich contrasting colors, applying them with broad strokes using a larger brush. The colors were partially blended directly on the canvas, creating dynamism and a sense of movement. It was important to me that the background wasn't passive, but had its own energy and interacted with the image. Moving on to the clothing, I picked up a medium brush and began working with form and volume. I applied the main color spots confidently without being overly precise. Using black paint and a thin brush, I later emphasized the folds and contours while maintaining a graphic quality. The hair became a key element of the painting. Then I added shades, slightly thinning the acrylic with water to achieve soft transitions. I worked with it boldly, combining warm and cool shades, red, orange, blue, and purple. I used a medium brush to lay down the main color masses, then a fine brush to add jagged, expressive lines. I wanted to convey not realism, but a sense of state flow, energy, inner tension. I painted the face more carefully, intentionally simplifying the color. I used light, almost neutral tones to contrast with the rich surroundings. I used a medium brush to lay the foundation. And with a fine brush, I refined the eyes, eyebrows, and lips. I left the lines slightly graphic without smoothing them out completely. This emphasizes the stylization that makes the image more expressive. In the final step, I returned to the details. I accentuated the lips with a bright color, strengthened the contours, and added individual lines to the clothing and background. The fine brush was the key here. It allowed me to tie all the elements together and establish the final rhythm. Critical assessment of the painting. The result, the strength of the work was the expressive color and the contrast between the calm face and the emotional surroundings. The hair and background create a sense of movement and inner energy. The graphic lines hold the shape well and prevent the color from bleeding. What didn't quite work? Some of the transitions between the background and the hair could have been more deliberate in places. They clash. The clothing could be given more depth through tonal nuances. What could be added or changed? The light and shadow in the face could be enhanced, almost hinting at it, to add volume. It would also be interesting to introduce one repeating accent color throughout the painting for even greater cohesion, style, and audience. The painting is executed in the style of an expressive contemporary portrait with elements of naive and art expressionism. It might appeal to people who value emotion, color, and the inner state of an image, rather than academic precision. It will be especially appealing to creative people, lovers of contemporary art, and interior accent pieces.